Say that again. Maybe I'll stop saying yeah at the end of
Yes. Hi, I'm Lindsay Joyce.
And I'm Tomek Gil.
And we're the husband-wife duo of 3F Living, an architecture and interior design firm here in the city. We help our clients from the initial design to move-in day, and this time around, we're taking you along on our journey with our renovation. And on today's episode, we're talking about lighting. That as we're going through the design process with our clients, but also with us on this renovation, design and lighting is so important. Tomek, why don't you walk us through when you're laying out the space? Do you consider lighting day one on where those moments could be? Or is that more of like an afterthought after the space is developed?
Oh, absolutely, day one.
Okay.
You really get a sense of where there's not enough light in the apartment. From the initial kind of design, from the survey, from the moment you survey the apartment, you already see which areas could benefit from additional kind of lighting. And in those areas, we very often like to include ambient lights that are built into the design or the millwork, which could kind of help us supplement the lights that would otherwise be missing from missing windows. You know, we're dealing with apartments. So, you know, there are often areas in these apartments that are kind of dark because not all of the spaces are exposed to the outside.
I wanted to touch upon why we went to the Luke Lampco studio. Tomek and I, we found the tracer light, which is the one that we're using over our dining room table. As soon as we found this light, we were like, this is amazing. Because, you know, even though there are a million LED light fixtures that are on the market, and we found really nice ones as an alternative too, because we understand that there's a certain price point for the Luke Lampco fixtures. However, I do feel like that sometimes with LED fixtures that you can get this kind of cold or bright or shockingly jarring feeling when you're looking at the fixture. If they're not executed well with the right kind of soft focus lens or something to that nature that diffuses the intensity of it. Or sometimes you get these like real spotty things, which is like our pet peeve. We do not like to see the spots of the diodes. Yeah. Like we got to have it tight. You got to have the diodes tight.
That's why we like our LEDs to be a higher, especially the strips to be a higher quality with a nice diffusing lens, because we don't want to see those little spots throughout. They don't look good, and you know, there are fixtures out there that provide this nice even glow, and it really enriches the space when you turn those on. And Luke Lampco is an excellent example of that kind of a fixture.
Yeah, I mean, they have so many color temperatures to choose from, which is like so cool. And I actually didn't even realize the diversity of light color temperatures that they were able to do if we didn't go to their studio.
Yeah, we learned a lot on our field trip.
It was great.
And you know, I'm so happy that we went, because this Luke Lampco fixture that you're talking about, the tracer bar in particular, is a bit of an inspiration for our design. We really love your lights. So I went to the site and they just started downloading all the models. So I have the 6-foot rope light. In one area, we're gonna have this long table in the apartment, and we thought this light would be just such a nice complement to.
You're talking about one of the linear fixtures,
a
tracer bar.
Tracer bar,
yeah. And actually, I have a question about that. Yeah. So I see you can kind of like wrap these. Does it, like on the site, like I see that there's like different like loops and things like that?
Like they're set up differently. Are they fixed?
Like, no, are those, like, can you just kind of do your thing?
They're not. So the styles that you see that we render and photograph are, you know, suggested.
Right.
But if you were to buy this fixture, just as an example, and you can play with this if you want, there's a lot of rope here, and if you wanted it to drop lower, you can adjust your loops like that.
That's really cool.
You could do basically anything you want. We suggest being maybe a little bit gentle with the rope because there is LED inside.
Yeah.
Like don't tie it in a tight knot.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to kink it very, very tight.
Yeah.
And these are all the different finishes that they can come in?
Yes, these are all 6 finishes. So,
look at polished
this
chrome.
one's interesting too.
Yep.
I like this one.
That's antique brass.
It's the antique, yeah, the antique brass is nice. I mean, I live
Copper's
more
kind of
probably
nice.
here, but I do like this one.
think
I like the black as well. I think that, the black is pretty cool.
our most popular finishes are satin brass and blackened brass.
And the black,
That's
yeah.
the top right corner. It's sort of disappearing within the light right now, but
No, they're really nice. So Tomek, you said that you consider lighting day one, and you do that when you first do the site survey. And when you do the site survey of the existing conditions, I'm assuming that you're taking into account whether it's a gray day or a light-filled day. Regardless, you're kind of looking to see, is that southern facing, is that eastern facing, like where is that window located so that you can assume where the light would come in. Is that really where you decide what type of lighting? Like, how does that process start for you? And how much do you consider the natural light versus ambient light?
So the natural light is always kind of our starting point. A lot of the surveying is being done late morning, at noon, so that you really get the fullness of the exterior light in the apartment. So this is kind of where we start. If we need to supplement that light, that's when we start looking at strategically locating ambient lighting and other types of fixtures throughout. But really, the starting point is the natural light, because that is the best light. It's the one that's gonna, that's gonna make you feel like you're part of nature. It moves through the day. So it's a very important factor to consider, and it's always the starting point for us. Okay, Lindsay, so I touched upon ambient lighting, but there's many different ways that light can play a role in the design. Can you maybe explain a little bit for our viewers what the differences are between ambient desk lighting and more direct lighting?
Yeah. So, like Tomek had mentioned, we find lighting to be extremely important. And whenever we're designing a space, we try to layer the lights. We talk about layering lights all the time with our clients. So that would go from the ambient lights, which would be a fixture as an example of an ambient light, could be a built-in cove light, whether that's up lighting, down lighting, linear lighting, toe kick lighting, under cabinet lighting, at your kitchen countertops and things like that. That's all kind of ambient light. Then you have task light, which is generally what it means. You're doing a task and you need a direct light that's usually from like a wall sconce or a nice light on your desk or nightstand, things like that, where you're looking to really sit down, read something, and complete a task.
Right.
It's essentially what that means. It's directional task light.
Reminds me of my little reading sconce that we had in our previous apartment.
Yes.
Where we really, we had a lot of different types of lights, but we wanted one space. I personally wanted one area where I could just sit down and read something without having to put everything on. And so we installed a directional sconce.
So task lights can be anything from sconces on walls to reading lights to desk lights, things like that. This is the one that we're going to use.
Yeah.
Isn't this cool?
I have this one in the model right now, the smaller one.
Do you?
Yeah.
So what are the sizes that these come in?
Yeah. So what you're seeing on the wall is the 5-foot and the 4-foot of that sconce.
Okay.
And there's a 3-foot as well. And they come in all of our finishes.
Which size did you put on our model?
I have the 4-foot.
The 4-foot.
Yeah.
It's really cool. We're very much into lighting, and just like the glow of the light, not like boom on like a fixture in your face and overly like dramatic, but like just the actual light itself. And so for us for really Tomek putting in toe kick lights and like cove lights and up lights,
we like ambient lighting, so this kind of works right
falls
into it.
Within that whole line of what we do.
Yeah, because you guys have this, but in like a sconce form.
Yes, we do.
Right, with like a shorter stem.
Yes.
And so I was thinking of using that as a sconce over like our sofa
Oh,
area.
right, for the artwork.
Yeah, so this is the fixture
Oh,
that I was
got it.
looking at.
Yeah.
Yep, you're totally right. Same fixture, basically the stem just points to the side, and then there's a round wall plate.
Yeah.
And yeah, normally they're mounted vertically, but you're
So,
talking about putting it.
Yeah.
Like, and then
yeah,
putting
like
artwork
as
underneath
an
it.
art light,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Just like a glow.
And then of
Then
course
you-
we have
Directional light,
directional,
right? So you
an
have
overhead.
an overhead lights, right? So those are those recessed lights that you typically see in the ceiling. Those can be either directionally just always pointing downwards, which you can't move them, or sometimes they will be directional where you can actually rotate the head of the recessed light so that you can point on like artwork to illuminate those areas. So we tend to work, and then you have natural light too, right? So we tend to layer and understand where the natural light is coming from. That's a big first step. And then we kind of layer the lights around that. You never want to be in a bathroom and have a recessed light shining directly down over the vanity where the mirror is, because it casts shadows and it's very hard for women to put on makeup if you are doing it there. Same thing is that like when you're sitting down at your dining room table or in your living room, you never want recessed light shining right down on top of your head. You kind of want them on the perimeter and not directly above.
We want to avoid dramatic shadows. We
Yeah.
want everything to kind of glow
Yes.
and
look beautiful.
Be beautiful, be illuminated, but without casting dramatic shadows.
Oh, this is the one I was talking
So
about.
how do you guys get such
This is
even light inside the rope housing with because your diodes are facing in one direction? So do you double up the strip or quadruple it?
We do not double up the strip. We actually have tried that, and it generates a little bit too much heat.
Got it.
And so we use special tubing material that has basically just the right amount of diffusion.
Okay, so there's like a lens inside the rope.
Yep. So we work directly with tubing manufacturers to come up with the exact material, the exact compound that actually creates the right, not only flexibility, because
you have to be able to bend it and
It's almost like the texture of the rope allows it
like
to
diffuses
be
the light
even.
further. Yeah.
Like almost like a diffusing lens. Like you know how you get the lens that's on the
so you get a diffusing tube inside, and then
so it's
that
just,
material
and that's
on top
what's
of it.
making it like illuminate. I'm assuming around the material.
The braid does a lot for kind of evening it out and creating this glow effect.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so whenever I'm doing my electrical plan, I always like to consult you about switch locations. I think you have a very good sense of how to move through the space and where the controls should be. So maybe you could take us a little bit, tell us a little bit about what the strategy would be in terms of switch locations and what types of switches, because there's so many options these days.
Yeah. So switches, right? We know the regular on-off switch used to be like this, and now it's usually like a toggle that you're going between. Dimmers are essentially something that I recommend all the time. I think that if it can be on a dimmer, it should be on a dimmer. Also, that's kind of a twofold, is that right now we need to really think about energy efficiency, and energy efficiency is really installing LEDs throughout your entire apartment. And in doing that, LEDs, when they're on at full blast, are extremely bright. So I do recommend using them on dimmers, which could be really nice. I feel like that when an LED recessed light, or really any LED light, is on full blast, it really is task related. But when you start to like lower the light level, shockingly, not with like, I feel like other fixtures, but with LEDs specifically, it can turn into more of like an ambient glow, because that's what LEDs are. That's what you're able to do with LEDs. That's what I think is so important. So where do we locate them? Well, we don't want to look at our walls and see light switches everywhere. We try to gang them up. And now, with the way that they're able to make light switches, Lutron is one that we use all the time, whether it's just a regular on-off switch, to a regular dimmer switch, to a semi-smart switch, which I'll explain, to a very smart keypad. So you can go full-blown keypad. I'm wiring everything, so I have like 2 keypads throughout my spaces with 8 buttons that control all of my lights and my phone. That's one way to do it. we believe in that for our apartment, but not everybody wants to do that, and that's totally fine. There is a way to do this now, which I find to be very interesting, is that I think that it's really crucial that like when you're leaving your apartment, that you're able to hit one switch and turn off all the lights, or come in and hit one button and turn on whatever lights, whatever scene you want when you first walk in. And you are able to do that with a semi-custom capability, which means you can hardwire on a neutral to regular dimmers throughout your entire space, but you can buy the separate remote that kind of goes by your entry where you can turn it on and off, and it can talk to those other fixtures or the other light switches, which is great. If you don't want to do that, then I think definitely try to gang up as much as you can. It's cool. So what if we get it and we're like, we want more loops? How do you like
longer rope?
Longer rope.
Yeah.
Is that at all possible to get like a longer rope?
That's what that is. So if you had a 6 foot bar and bought a 10-foot rope,
right?
You know, you'd get that like.
So
Got it.
I believe that's a 10-foot fixture in that photo, and this is actually a free end version,
Right.
where you actually see the rope is only
Yeah.
connected on one side.
Yeah.
The other end has just a cap, and that's actually something that can be fun to do if you want to be able to restyle your rope, very often, or just play with it because it's fun to play with.
Yeah.
Because having that end detached, it's actually not hard to detach if you don't have the free end cap on there. But yeah, essentially, if you find that you want the fixture more loopy, we can sell you a longer rope that will let you do that.
Okay.
And we can match that up with.
I feel like you should not have that option.
You want both ends attached.
Every day there's going to be a project.
Yes, but in the shop, and it's like,
you know, there's an interactive like built-in interactive feature in the fixture. You know, you do
honestly,
like if you have that bug to like just
Yeah.
like I want to kind of change the space around a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, it allows you to do that in
It
a way
also
that
makes it
most
feel-
other fixtures don't.
And it also makes you feel like it's more unique to like what you did. Like
Yeah.
you create, so it's almost like you
Right,
are
you
part
take
of you
ownership
take
of the
ownership
of the design.
fixture, because it's like
Yeah.
you kind of got to do it yourself too.
So we might
which
consider
is
something
unique.
with
I think
the
that's what I'm
loose
saying.
end.
I want a loose end.
But
I think.
Personally, I do like the
'Cause you're an
rope
architect,
coming out from
and it's
both
structured,
ends.
and
It's just,
right.
there's something,
organized.
yeah, there's symmetry to it, right?
Right.
Because you have the mess in the middle, but then
Right.
the ends are symmetrical and fixed exactly, like they're
Yeah.
anchored, you know.
I like that.
So we'll have to discuss.
I need the
Discuss
discuss
flexibility.
amongst ourselves.
One thing that is kind of cool about that hardware, though, is if you have the free end version and you change your mind, you just take the cap off, take the end plug
Oh,
out,
okay.
put
Right.
the rope in. It's totally
so you
internally compatible. So
there you go.
that
Once
might,
we get the right looping,
that might
we
tell
can
you
make it. Okay, so Tomek, so I briefly touched upon energy efficiency, but I do think if you could just like kind of cohesive explain to us what that means in today's world versus even 5 years ago.
So the current energy code that we have here in the city, and this is an international code, it mandates that we install that 90% of the light fixtures that you install in your apartment are high efficiency. And high efficiency fixtures would be something like an LED. And just to give you an idea of the difference between that and our old school incandescent is that LEDs are about 4 times as efficient as an incandescent bulb. So for the same amount of light, your energy cost and energy consumption is a quarter of what it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the city really wants us to apply this throughout the apartments. And it works really well for us because the LEDs give us a lot of flexibility. They allow us to control the light temperatures sometimes. They can be dimmed really low with still providing a sufficient output for any given situation. And they're great for these ambient lights that we love to install throughout the units. So
I think that again, LED fixtures, sometimes they're just very linear and they're within metal and they just feel sometimes too stark. Too modern. But what I love about those fixtures, and actually all of them, they have this just this curve, this organic kind of feeling behind them, where it can be warm, it can be cool, it can almost transform into any style that you need it to be in. And we feel that we have very we have way more ambient lighting in our space because of all the coves that we put in and toe kick lights that we're putting in and all this stuff, because that's how we like to live. We like to live in the ambient light.
Mm-hmm.
And when Tomek was like designing the cove light in our living room space, that's what kind of said, okay, well, like, let's embrace maybe like a wall sconce that would also go, you know, in our space. And again, that went back to the same fixture. We didn't really want to depart.
And we always had that idea of that table kind of sitting in the middle of the space.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to, and the table's already a kind of a rigid feature, and we didn't want to put another rigid thing on top of it.
Right.
So this kind of rope,
like
this
movement.
rope light really gives a lot of movement, and it's also interactive. You can kind of transform it a little bit. You can move it around and shift it as needed, you know. So
which I love. I love
so
that.
it's going to be right up her alley, and she's going to be playing with it, I'm sure, for years to come.
Yes.
So this concludes our lighting episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining us. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.